Hey, this is Avery Buchholz. I'm a neurosurgeon at the University of Virginia, and I'm going to get into landing a job in pitfalls. And again, this is going through the Transition to Practice lecture series. These are my disclosures. So ideally, when we're looking at landing a job, a big question is when to start. And I would recommend everybody to start early. I think 1 year, 2 years out is definitely not too early. Some people start looking around and speaking with people earlier than that, but be proactive. So keep in touch with prior residents, keep in touch with colleagues, people you meet at meetings, and people you've known from maybe med school or residency. But keep in touch with them. Lots of really good jobs are not posted. Lots of people are looking for the right person, the right fit. And these are people you want to just reach out to on your own, speak with them. And meetings are a great place to meet these folks, connect with people, and get a sense of what's out there, who's out there, and what's available to you. But definitely be proactive and start early. Another big one is to be honest with yourself. So when you're in training, there may be pressure to go a certain direction, to take an academic job, to take a certain location, and you have to be honest with yourself. What you're really looking for. Maybe an academic job isn't what truly makes you happy. Maybe being in private practice isn't what makes you happy. So find that out and look for that. But again, it's important to be honest with yourself. Think through what your priorities are. Be thoughtful about this and identify what those are, and keep that in mind when you're looking at different opportunities. So as you go through, gather information. It's really not impolite to ask things. What sorts of jobs are out there? Who's hiring? What the job entails? What they're really looking for. And when you go through this, make sure that your goals align with the goals of your employer. Find out what they're looking for. If they don't align, there's going to be turmoil over time. As you try and advance your career, if what you want and they want aren't on the same page, that's going to make things difficult. And really understand the practice. So there's all kinds of different practice models out there, some academic, some private practice, solo practice. So understand the practice model. There's pros and cons to all these. There's risk and benefits to all these. Again, find out what's important to you, what things you're looking for, and make sure those align with the practice model. How entrepreneurial do you want to be? Some of us want to go to work, not have to worry about the practice side of things, the hiring, the firing, the billing, the collections, all those things. There's pros and cons to all that. Some people want to be more involved with that and be a little bit more business savvy. So these are all things that you should think about and be aware of going in. And again, that kind of comes down to control and independence. Some of us want more than others, and I think that's just a personal preference. And what makes you happy is what you have to figure out. But when you are looking at practices, don't think you are limited in a private practice. Don't think that there's certain things you necessarily can't do in private practice. I know a lot of guys in private practice who do more academic things than I do, who are just as academically productive in terms of publications as I am, or more so. I think you can still do complex surgeries as long as you have the resources around you and you feel comfortable and your hospital feels comfortable. There's really nothing you can't do in private practice that you can do in academics, and vice versa. I think there's really it's really wide open as long as you're willing to kind of make those things happen. But you do want to find out what the resources are and what limitations there may be. If there's certain things you want to be doing that the hospital may not be set up to do or may not feel comfortable doing, you want to know that going in. When you are interviewing, it's really more about fit and less about your CV. Same as interviewing for residency and fellowships. Kind of once you get in the door, everyone's really looking for a fit. So it's how you interact with faculty, it's how you interact with staff. Be nice to everybody, not just the people you interview with, the doctors you interview with. Be nice to the staff, be nice to the nurses. Make sure you have give a good impression to everybody, because everybody talks. Everyone's going to get together and say, hey, what do you think about this candidate? What do you think about this person? And they want to know how you're going to assimilate into the group. You also want to see, do they really want you there? If you get the sense that maybe they're not as interested in having you there as you are as being there, that's something to be aware of also, because when you are there, you want to make sure you're a good fit. And that kind of goes into, why is this group hiring? Why are they hiring? Are they trying to compete with other groups? Do they have pressure to build a business? Do they want you to fill a niche? Are the other surgeons in the practice in the community busy enough? Be aware of, if they're not busy enough and you start working there, how is that going to be handled? Is that going to create conflict? There's nothing wrong with meeting with the other ortho and neuro providers, both at the hospital and in the community. You want to make sure you get a sense of what sort of volumes are there, what people are looking for, and you can talk to other groups, competing groups in the same area, and get a sense, especially if you know people in the area. That may be a helpful thing to do. In terms of structure, you want to look at how is this job structured. Is there guaranteed income? Is there a commitment with that? Is this salary a loan, or is it truly given to me? If it is a loan, you may be on the hook to pay some of this back, whether it's through additional work, or if you leave early, you may be on the hook to pay some of this back. Is it productivity based? If it is productivity based, how much time in the OR do you get? How many patients are you going to have access to? How is call structured? How is your bonus structured? These are all things you want to be aware of. We're not taught a whole lot of this in training. So these are things that it's helpful to have friends in the community you can reach out to, friends from who have already taken jobs you can talk to, and that's why we're here as well. If it is productivity based, it's helpful to see other surgeons' data. How busy are the other surgeons? How much block time is there in the OR? What are the volumes of clinic? How many clinic days do you get? What's the wait list for patients to get in clinic? What are the referral patterns and the call structure? These are all things that are going to impact your ability to be busy, and depending on how busy you want to be, may or may not be important to look at. Another thing is billing. We talked about this with the structure of the practice, but who's really responsible for billing? If this is something you're responsible for, you want to make sure you're up to speed on this. NASS does a really good job of educating us on this, but in residency and fellowship, we don't get that much training in billing. So make sure you understand it, how it's collected, what sort of ancillary incomes there may be, and again, how are patients routed to and from you. And when you start a practice, you want to be aware of marketing. So there may or may not be a budget for this. Depending on how you're paid, you may want to get yourself out there. You may want to let people in the community, other doctors know you're here in the community, you're available to refer patients to, and how is this handled? Also, in terms of capital equipment, you may say you want a certain piece of imaging equipment or a robot or a certain tool, and you want to make sure if you do want these things, these are things you speak to both the practice and the hospital up front. Once you start working, there's going to be less incentive to keep you happy by acquiring these sorts of capital purchases, and you want to make sure you get some sort of verbal or written agreement, or preferably written agreement early on. You also want to understand what the buy-in is. This kind of goes along with your budget. If you have to buy into this practice, understand how much money that's going to take in the long run. Again, expectations. You want both the practice and you to have the same expectations, understand what everyone's expectations are. If you're someone who wants to work with industry, you want to be able to understand what you own in terms of intellectual property. If you do develop products or get involved with companies, what do you own versus what does the practice of the hospital own? Those are things to establish and understand early up front. If you do want to work with industry, understand what you're able to do with them also. When you're doing your negotiation, first impressions are huge. And again, as I said in the interview, when you're interviewing, be nice to everybody, be friendly to everybody, really put your best foot forward. Make sure you and your spouse are on the same page. There's always stories about an individual going out to interview, then bringing their spouse for a second look, and just not being on the same page, and it being clearly miscommunication, something that's not going to be a good fit for everybody. Again, we talked about block time, we talked about clinic space. In some jobs, there's really no room to negotiate. I know a lot of academic jobs, the job is what it is, and you either want it or you don't, and it's not that the practice doesn't love you or want you, there's just not much room for them to negotiate. They're kind of in a strict financial structure, and most everyone's in the same structure. So just be aware of that and understand sometimes it's not a personal thing. There just may not be a whole lot of room to negotiate. Communicate clear timelines. So if you do like a job, don't let them hang for months and weeks, without speaking to them. Make sure they understand where you are. Give them a timeline. Hey, I'm going to let you know by this date. Let's talk. Understand when to accept and decline invitations, and really never say anything bad about people or programs, even after you leave. Word always gets back. People always talk, and things are always said. So just be careful with those things, and then you'll save yourself a lot of trouble. When you do get to the contractual part, make sure you use an attorney. It's a little bit of money up front, but it makes a big difference in the long run, and it's worth the spend. So in conclusion, be honest with yourself, understand the practice, look beyond the dollar figure, and really understand what's going to make you happy in the long run and what's going to make you satisfied at the end of the day. Don't upset anybody, don't talk about people, and the first job is really a learning experience. We all tend to take second and third jobs Very rarely does someone find the first job to be the perfect fit for them. So don't be too anxious about this, and you'll learn a lot during the process. Thank you.